You're listening to Sarah Hagan Backstage, with interviews and insights from years inside the music industry. Join Sarah as she talks with masters of their crafts, finding out what makes them tick, both inside and outside of the music business.
Welcome to Sarah Hagan Backstage. My guest today, Antonio Sanchez, is my first follow-up guest on this podcast. Today, we are going to talk about his new album, Shift Bad Hombre 2, which is available for pre-order on Amazon Music and wherever you get your music. We are going to deep dive into the album, talk about the different tracks, the process of making the album, and all of the amazing guest artists that Antonio has. So come along with me as I catch up with Antonio Sanchez. Antonio, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Sarah. Great to be here with you again.
Yes, and you are my first repeat guest. So we're doing a part 2, a follow-up to our last interview. And I'm so excited about it because there were some things that were happening that we wanted to talk about last time, but we also wanted to wait until they were happening, and they're happening now. So I'm going to just jump right in and talk about your new album, which is being released. And I am so excited about that. It's August 26th is the release date, right? And it's Bad Hombre Volume 2.
Well, Shift Bad Hombre Volume 2. That's two titles.
Okay, so we want to make it the whole title, Shift Bad Hombre Volume 2. And it comes out on August 26th, but you can pre-order it, right? Already you can pre-order, and it's on Warner Records, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we get to talk about the new album, and I wanted to jump into this last time because I was so excited about it. You had sent me some of the tracks to hear and get an idea about what the album was, and I was super excited about it because it's so incredible. So now we get to like really jump in and talk about it in detail.
You were actually one of the first people I sent it to.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. I feel honored.
I knew, we've known each other for a long time, and if there was somebody that could appreciate it, I knew it was going to be you. So you were one of the first ones for sure.
Thank you so much, Antonio. I was so excited for you. I called you and left you a voicemail because
it made my day. Really
I knew you were touring and I knew that you wouldn't be able to answer, but I also didn't want to just text you because it was too big of a deal for me to just send a text. So I was like, I'm just going to leave him a voicemail. And I think I rambled a little bit, but I was like, just so excited because the album is so incredible. And, I loved the first Bad Hombre record, of course. And this one I just felt was like the perfect sequel. It was just kind of a continuation. And I just want to hear you talk a little bit about like the concept of the first and the second album. And then maybe we can talk about some of the tracks too.
Sure. Well, I mean, the second one is so different from the first one because just the whole genesis of it is just completely different. The first one was during the Trump presidency. Well, actually during the Trump candidacy. And I had, everybody knows what he said about Mexicans and about bad hombres. And that's why I used that name for the album. And it was kind of like a protest album. I wanted to make a statement on how, I was feeling around that time about what was going on politically in the country. And, I thought what better way to do it than to just play a bunch of drums, while I'm angry. So that's kind of what I did. I improvised a bunch of, for hours and hours here in my home studio. And then I started editing the improvisations, chopping them up, and then just messing around with them, adding electronics, adding voices. It was a very experimental album. I had never done an album like that where it was just me by myself, kind of like a mad scientist in my little lab, just trying to do something different than I'd done before. And all of my records before, I would sit at the piano and then write a bunch of tunes, rehearse it with the band, go into the studio, and then mix it and master it, and that's it, you know. But this one, I took my time, and I could work for 1 hour or 15 hours. You know, it didn't matter because it was my studio and my space. So that allowed for a lot of creative, um, experimentation, and that was so much fun to make, and then to see the results immediately after. Because usually, when you write the song and then you rehearse it with the band. I mean, it takes a while for you to get the final product.
Hmm.
But what because I was doing it at home, I was recording it and mixing it at the same time, and by the end of the day, I would see the results of the day. So that was very satisfying. So I wanted to make another one of these kind of Bad Hombre albums, and Bad Hombre, I use that name because obviously because of the Trump thing, and because it's also a play on words. When you say something, man, that's super bad, it means that it's good.
Hmm.
Then I was one man doing it, one hombre. So Bad Hombre seemed like a really useful title for what I was doing. Plus, it had the political connotation. And then I met this woman, Miho Nishimoto, who works at Warner. I was doing a gig with Pat Metheny in Hamburg, and she was working at Warner, and she asked me, "What are you doing nowadays?" And I told her about the first Bad Hombre, sent it to her. She really liked it. That record won me a German award called Echo back then, so she was aware of that. And then she said, maybe we could do something together. Let me know what you're interested in doing next. So I said I would like to do another one of those where it's just kind of me experimenting in my studio. And
Hmm.
she was into it. But then right around that time, I went to Mexico, and I went to a concert of a friend of mine. Her name is Silvana Estrada, she's in the record in this new Bad Hombre. And I went to her show, and she's an incredible singer songwriter. And her show was amazing, but she did this one tune with just her cuatro guitar and,
Hmm.
and her voice. She has an incredible, very haunting voice. And I heard that tune. I was like, man, I would love to just get a hold of that track just with her voice and the quattro and just see what I can do with it.
Hmm.
So after the show, I went to see her backstage, and I told her, man, can you send me that track? Could you just re-record it with a click, and just your voice and your quattro separately, and just let me fool around with it. Let me see what I can do. She said, yeah, yeah, that sounds like a cool idea. And then she sent it to me a few days later, and then I got to work, and I just wanted to basically reimagine what she did. What she
Hmm.
sent me was a very beautiful track. It's in 5/4, and it's a very cryptic text, basically, that she wrote about the disappearance of women in Mexico.
Hmm.
It was very haunting, but it was very linear. It stayed kind of here the whole time, and it's very hypnotic and beautiful. So I wanted to see how I could shape it in a slightly different way. So in some parts, I would remove her guitar and then just reharm everything she did, and then kind of break it in the middle, and then do this really epic thing with a kind of like a drum solo on top of a vamp. I just wanted to
Hmm.
reimagine it completely, and I worked on it for a few weeks, and then I sent it to her, and she loved it. She was like, "Wow, I never thought my tune could sound like that. I never
Wow.
imagined that way." So luckily, she liked it, and then I sent that to Mijo, this woman at Warner, and she freaked out. She was like, "This is I've never heard anything like this. What about doing the whole record like that?" And I said, "That's exactly what I'm thinking. I want to kind of keep going with this concept of singers giving me a song, and then me just kind of reworking it, reimagining it, and producing it in a completely different way." So then it was, okay, who can we get? And I didn't really want jazz people because I've been doing the jazz thing for a long time, and
Sure.
I kind of wanted to go back to my rock and roll roots. you know,
Right.
because I grew up listening to the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Cream, Who, Led Zeppelin, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, the Police, Rush, and then of course the Fusion, Chicory Electric Band, Pat Metheny Group, and all the
Mhm.
jazz artists that I was into uh, after that. So I wanted to go back to my rock roots, but obviously it was gonna be seen through the lens of somebody that has been playing jazz for a long, long time now. So it was going to be something different. I just didn't know what it was going to be, but
Mhm.
I knew it was not going to be a rock record, but it was not going to be a jazz record. But I wanted to have people that would give me material that would make me go into a different direction that I normally would go to.
Sure.
So the second person I thought about reaching out to was Trent Reznor, because obviously Trent Reznor is Trent Reznor.
Yes.
And I met him at the Golden Globes when I was nominated for Birdman for Best Score, and who was nominated for Gone Girl or something like that. I can't remember exactly what movie he was
Mhm.
nominated for, but I met him and Hans Zimmer the first night, the same night, and we hung out, and they were super cool because they really loved Birdman. They kind of Trent sent me an email saying, I think you kind of invented a new language on how to score a film. So obviously
Wow.
it resonated with them, and I was obviously ecstatic that he was so nice. To just some random drum guy. So when the time came, I just sent him an email, and I said, "Look, I'm doing this project, and I don't know if you would want to be a part of it." This was during the pandemic. The
Yes.
pandemic had just started.
Mhm.
So, I wasn't expecting a yes, but I thought, what's the worst thing that could happen is that man, I don't have time. I'm sorry. But surprisingly, he wrote to me and he said, "Well, I'm working on this soundtrack for this movie called Soul." That
Mhm.
ended up being Soul, of course. And then he said, "But I would like to do something new for you," because I told him it could be something new, something old, something that already exists. It can be a sketch, anything that you want to give me, I can work with. And the idea is to have the drums and the voice be the main two ingredients, and
Mhm.
then just let me reimagine whatever you send me. And he said, "Oh, that sounds interesting, and but I want to send you something new." So he went to work with Atticus Ross, his writing partner, and then a few weeks later he sent me this whole Pro Tools session that I opened, and it was a few of his voices, and then a few of Atticus Ross's synths. And it was
Mhm.
very it was just kind of like a sequencer kind of thing with very straight eight notes, but you couldn't really tell where one was. and
Mhm.
and then Trent was kind of riffing on top of that with his really deep voice. It was really amazing. So immediately I was like, "Oh my god, what can I do with this?" And I started just kind of improvising on top of it, trying different drum beats, trying different approaches, and then little by little I started kind of honing in on what I wanted it to be. But the funny thing is that I think Trent thought it was going to be just a very minimalistic thing, kind of like Birdman, drums on top of his voice, very loose. I think that's what he was thinking.
Mhm.
But then what I sent him, was like a full-fledged, like industrial rock kind of anthem. It
Yes.
gets really, really, really big, and but it also has nuance in the beginning and in the middle. It's not like a straight rock thing that just
Mhm.
starts hard and ends hard. So I was very shy to send it to him because those guys have been around for a long time and they really know what they're
Sure.
doing in terms of production, especially. And And I sent it to him, and a couple of days later, he wrote to me like, "I have finally got to listen to it. I'm blown away. This is incredible what you've done. It's so cool. So let me get my engineer involved to see if we can remix it in a way that these things stand out a little bit more." So I was just floored that he was so happy with it. So then it just started snowballing from there, and it was cool because having Trent on the record then opened the door for other artists that maybe normally wouldn't have said yes. So I would send the same email to every artist, basically saying, this is the idea of the record. This is what I did with Trent Reznor's tune. So
Hmm.
maybe you might be interested in some doing something like that. So then that's how the record came to be. So I have 12 different artists on it, and it's been just an incredibly satisfying process to work with this raw material from all these incredible artists.
Absolutely. I can imagine that. And I just love the fact that you had this concept for the album and you just decided, I'm going to reach out to these people. And like you said, what's the worst they can say? I'm too busy right now, right? And I live by that as well. Like, make the ask, because you just never know what can happen.
Exactly.
And, and also the fact that, Trent is a fan of yours and your work is incredible as well. And rightfully so, because your work's fantastic.
Thank you.
Um,
But the funny thing is that I'm the least famous person in the whole record. I mean, all my guests are like way more famous than I am, and so it's very humbling. Like, man, it's amazing that they gave their music, because to me, giving somebody a song for
mhm.
them to change and reimagine is like, okay, here's my baby. I know you're gonna do plastic surgery on my
Yes,
baby, but I'm hoping it's gonna be beautiful at the end. So
right.
it was just, definitely some pressure on me to deliver something that would be obviously very different from what they gave me,
Yes.
and that it would surprise them in a positive way, because you can also
Mhm.
be surprised and be like, oh my god, this is my tune. What the hell did they do with it? But I wasn't interested in doing, a bunch of drum solos or anything. I wanted it to be all about the song, and I wanted to keep the integrity of the song intact.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to chop up lyrics or anything like that. Just wanted to reimagine it in a way that maybe the authors, didn't think it was possible. So, for
Right.
example, another one of the artists, which of course I'm so proud to have, is Dave Matthews. and
Yes.
and the way that happened is because I did a gig with Bella Fleck in Mexico, and we opened for Dave Matthews because they know each other, and Dave always does this kind of weekend of gigs in the Riviera Maya in Mexico
Mhm.
every year, and he's looking for opening bands. And I think that time he asked Bella to open, and we went as a trio, and we opened up for him. And I met him, and he was super cool, and the whole vibe was very chill because it was on the beach. So
Mhm.
he was really just hanging around, and he loved our set. And then because we were there already, and his set was just duo with Tim Reynolds.
Okay.
So then he said, "Do you guys want to sit in with us?" And we're like, "Yes, of course." So then we played a couple of the Dave Matthews Band tunes with them, and it was a blast, and he was so much fun on stage. So
Yes.
anyway, that was that. And then when I was doing the record, I was like, "Bing," what if I asked? But I didn't have his phone number or anything. So then I asked Bella Flick, "Look, this is what I'm trying to do. Do you think Dave would be into it?" And then I didn't hear back from him. I just sent him a text. And then
Mhm.
like, 20 minutes later, I got a text from a random number. It says, "Hey, this is Dave. What do you need?" Bella said you needed something. I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah. So then I just wrote to him. I said, this is what I'm trying to do. Do you have a tune that you could give me? that it would be okay for for me to mess with. And
Yeah.
then yeah, let me think about it. And then he sent me the whole Pro Tools session of this tune called Ihi, which there was he said there's no recording of this, but there's this music video. So I checked out the video, and the video is amazing. And the song is really, really cool, but it's also very linear. It's just
Mm.
very groovy. It's all in 4/4, and it just goes like this the whole time. And I opened the session, and I had, I don't know, maybe like 15 different tracks of voices of
Mhm.
Dave, and then I had the rest of the band, but I just wanted to use the voices. That's it. So
Yes.
I started working on them, and then just trying to figure out what to do with them took me a little while because there were so many voices. And then,
Wow.
because the tune was in 4/4, I wanted to do something that maybe would surprise him. So then I ended up doing like the intro in 7, then the verses were in 9, then there's like a bridge that I did in 6/8. But it all, honestly, it kind of made sense to me. It didn't sound contrived, it didn't sound forced. So
Mhm.
I thought maybe he'll get a kick out of hearing his tune with all this weird, time signature changes. And then there was a section in the middle that it was maybe like eight bars, that it was this groove in 7, and I really liked the groove. And I thought, man, some kind of the record doesn't have any solos, no soloists. I kind of solo a little bit here and there, but I thought, it would be so cool to have a solo here. And I thought, well, I know a really, really good guitar player. His name is Pat Metheny.
Mhm.
So let me ask him, what he would think. So then I sent him the track, and I told him, look, what I would love for you to do is just do something crazy that doesn't sound like you at all. Basically, that nobody would recognize that is you. Something just wacky. And he heard the tune, and he was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. Let me try my hand at it. And then he sent me a few days later this crazy, crazy solo that I was like, man, this is so perfect. And then he also played things throughout the whole song that then I edited. So to have the Dave Matthews and the same and on the same song as Pat Metheny, it was just a trip. And then I sent it to Dave,
Mhm.
and he flipped out. He started texting me in real time as he was listening. I was like, "Oh my god, I never thought this would, the tune could sound like this." And he was super, super cool. Then he called me and he told me, you did so much to the song that I want to give you writer's credit, because this is like a different song altogether, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, so he gave me writer's credit. Trent also gave me writer's credit. So it's been such an amazing thing. And the rest of the artists I have in there, I wanted to have English speaking and Spanish speaking.
Mhm.
So I have Lila Downs from Mexico,
Mhm.
Silvana Estrada, who was the first one I talked about, Ana Tijoux, who is an incredible hip hop artist from Chile,
Yes.
Maro, who's an incredible Portuguese singer, and her song actually doesn't have lyrics; it's just a voice melody that she sent me. It's so beautiful. And then I have Michelle Indegocello, who is one of my idols. Since I remember being at Berkeley right in the beginning, and somebody played Plantation Lullabies for me, and I flipped out. I was like, "What the hell is this?" I've never heard
Yes.
that. So to have her on the record with me is also, very, very just incredible. Kimbra, who's an incredible artist from New Zealand. Tana Alexa, my wife, is on it too. We did a really cool song together. And then she also has a band called Sonica with Nicole Surides and Julia Adamy, and the three of them did this very cool song called Doyen, and then I grabbed it and I did something else with it. And then a guitar duo from Mexico they're huge. I mean, they play, like Glastonbury and Lollapalooza and stuff.
Mhm.
They're Rodrigo y Gabriela, and it's just this guy and this girl that play duo guitar in front of like thousands of people. It's quite remarkable what they did. And then they also gave me a song. And then I had a song called "Waiting" that I it was during the pandemic, so I was just working on my studio, and waiting was I'm the lyrics are just I'm waiting for this to pass. I'm just
Mhm.
hanging out waiting for this to pass, and those were the lyrics. So I did kind of like a demo of it, and I wanted actually Tom York for it. I thought he would be incredible, or Bjork. uh,
Wow.
but I just couldn't reach them. There was no way for me to reach them. I couldn't make the connection. And then I was like, it sounds pretty good with my voice, so I just left it in there. And that's the other track. So it's 12 guests plus me singing on one track. And then the icing on the cake was my grandfather, Ignacio Lopez Tarso, who is 97 years old, and he's one of the most revered, famous actors in Mexico, is still alive and still working. I asked him if he would be kind of the master of ceremonies of the album. So then I wrote him a few verses for him to recite in the beginning of the record. And at the end of the record, in the beginning, he's kind of, I was envisioning like a typical Mexican square, central square, like a plaza,
Mhm.
with all the sounds of the square, with the guy selling candy and the children kind of screaming in the background, and then the church always with the
Mhm. The bell, yep.
Sunday on a Sunday morning.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden my grandfather's voice comes in, inviting everybody to gather around and then come in, listen to the music, and he explains a little bit about what is about to happen. And then I grabbed the most out of tune band from Mexico, like a brass band I could find on the internet. It didn't even have a name. The the band, the video, it was a video on YouTube. It just said "band from my town." That's all
Oh
it said.
my gosh.
And it didn't say from where, nothing. So, and you couldn't even see the band. It was like the camera was looking at something else, and it was just really low quality, and it
Mhm.
sounded so out of tune, but it was so funky at the same time. And I was like, oh my God. So I grabbed that, and then I started just kind of playing drums on top of that and doing different bass lines. And so I put that in the intro as well after my grandfather, invites everybody. So it's been a very, obviously, been a hell lot of work. I started
Yes.
working this like 3 years ago, and it's finally coming out. So I just can't wait for people to hear it on August 26th.
I can't wait either. I can't wait for people to hear it either. As you know, I am a big fan of Trent Reznor, and when you told me that he was going to be on a track, I was just so incredibly excited about that. And I feel like the whole album, I mean, all of the songs are incredible and unique from one to the next, but there's also this kind of like overall theme of like there's an overall intensity, I feel like, to this album that kind of that's kind of what connects it to the first one for me, because I feel like the first one was so intense. And this one, it has a different feel to it. It still has that intensity, but it's different, and I'm sure that that comes from the change in the world, basically. Like, you're making this album in um a little bit of a different world, still very difficult but in different ways, right? Like, you were facing new difficulties with pandemic and the way that you create music and the uncertainty of the future, still political strife in a different way at that point. So I mean, I felt that come through. I don't know how much you felt that going into it, but
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it was a perfect pandemic project because
yeah.
it was a collaboration, but people would just send me their tracks, and then I would just go to work here at home. And I had no time constraints, and I had all day to do it. So
Mhm.
probably if the pandemic wouldn't have happened, this would have been a different album. And I
Right.
don't know if people like Trent or Dave would have had the time,
Mhm.
to get into something like this. And I remember texting Dave and saying, "Man, I know you're super busy, but this is what I'm trying to do." And he's like, "I'm not busy at all, man. I'm just
Yeah.
here at home.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
I was like, perfect. That's how a lot of those collaborations came to be, because people just kind of had the time. And I think, the fact that I just wanted the voice and any other element that they would give me, and a click track, because
Yes.
I really wanted to reimagine it completely from bottom to the top.
Hmm.
So I'm sorry, and I forgot Becca Stevens, who is like, one of my idols as a singer songwriter. She's incredible. And for example, the tune with Becca is very interesting too. It's called The Bucket, and she asked me, so what is the record about? And I said, well, the first record I did was about social justice, the first battle,
Hmm.
and I would like this one to have something of that in it too. So, think about that. And then she came back and she said, well, I found this text, because she does stuff with her husband in prisons. Sometimes they bring music to prisons, and she found this text from a man called named Sterling Cunha, who had been in prison since he was 16 for a double murder, and he had been in solitary confinement all around 9 years in prison. But
Wow.
then he started writing, he started reading, he started doing poetry as a way to escape, the confinement, and he wrote a play along with other inmates that won this award, and she wrote music to the soliloquy of the play that Sterling Cunha wrote. And then she sent me the lyrics, and she sent me what she did, just her with her guitar and her voice. And I read the lyrics, and it was just like, I was floored. This guy that had been in prison since he was 16, now it's in his 40s, and I was just so moved, and
Mhm.
she said, can I send you also the beat that I'm thinking of? And I said, absolutely not. Don't send me any beats, because I don't want to know what you're thinking.
Right.
And what she sent me with her guitar was already had a very obvious intrinsic beat in it.
Hmm.
So what I was trying to do with all the songs is just not go to the obvious thing that
Yeah.
maybe what they sent me was kind of suggesting.
Hmm.
So I worked on it, and I completely tried to do it in a different way that she thought I was going to do it. And because I played everything myself, I used tons of electronics, but also I played bass, I played guitars, and mandolin and oud and ukulele. I have all these little instruments that I got because I did a film score during the pandemic. So I was like, I was using all of that stuff as tools. So then I sent it to her, and she was also texting me in real time as she was listening to it, and she was also floored. Like, she was like, man, I never thought the song was going to sound like this in the end, but she really liked it. And then she thought, there's a small detail, we need permission from Sterling to use the lyrics.
Oh, wow.
I
Right.
don't know him. It's just I saw the book, and the lyrics resonated with me.
Hmm.
Like, oh my god, so how are we going to get in touch? He was still in prison. So through her husband, they managed to get a hold of his girlfriend, and then his girlfriend connected us with him from prison. So Becca texted me, and she said, get on Skype right now, because I'm on with him. And I got it on Skype, and we were both talking to him, and we asked him for his permission. We showed him the tune through the phone, and he said, I'm just so humbled that my words are being used for something this beautiful. And he was super cool. And as a matter of fact, he was stuck in the legal system for years, just trying to get parole, and
Hmm.
it was a legal loophole that just couldn't let him apply for parole. It was a very complicated thing.
Hmm.
And I just got news a couple of weeks ago that he was just released. He got a commutation from the governor of Oregon, and I wrote a letter to the government, to the governor, and Becca also wrote a letter, and finally it happened. So he's free now, and he's
Wow.
doing lectures about his time in prison and being just super inspirational to other people, which is incredible. So to
That
have
is
that
incredible.
song on the album is also very, very special.
That is so special. I feel like there's so much in this album. There's so much collaboration, there's so much feeling in each individual song and the album as a whole, and I love that these artists were texting you in real time as they were listening, and that's what I was feeling too listening, going like, "Yes, I'm so excited." And I feel like this has been a journey because it has been a while for the whole process and then for the album to come out. And I'm just
Right.
so excited about it that it's happening and it's so close um
Yeah.
let's tell people how they can pre-order. Where can they find the album?
Well, it's on Warner, so I think if you go to the Warner site and look for my name or Shift, I think it comes up. And you can also pre-order it on Amazon now. And if you go to iTunes or Spotify, the whole album on iTunes, definitely the whole album appears there.
Mhm.
The only ones that you can listen to right now are the singles, which the first single was Trent's song, the second was Anna Tijoux song, and the third is coming out now in a couple of weeks on July 28th, and that's going to be Kimbra's to
Amazing.
called Suspended Animation. But you can pre-download the whole record nowadays. And one thing that I wanted to say for our drumming friends about what's I think special about this record is that one thing that I used to love about the big productions that I used to listen to as a kid, like for example, "So" by Peter Gabriel,
Mhm.
or some of the Led Zeppelin albums, or some of the Tears for Fears albums, like for example, "Sowing the Seeds of Love." The production is just so incredible on those records, and they just sound big.
Yes.
And I would listen to them all the time and just wonder, why do they sound so big? What is it that makes them sound so sonically satisfying? That you can just put on your headphones or on your speakers, and it just sounds great. Or you turn it up on your in your car, and it's just like the sound kind of envelops you.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I wanted to do with this album. That to me sometimes it's a little lacking from jazz albums. Of course, it's a different animal. If
Mhm.
you have a jazz quartet, you know you're gonna get this amount of sonic material. But in a record like this, or like the records I mentioned, it's just so much sound coming
Mhm.
at you. And I was really analyzing, why do they sound so big? And obviously it's the layering of tons of sounds. So they layer a lot of keyboards, a lot of guitars, a lot of voices. So there's it's like an onion. There's like tons and
Mhm.
tons of layers. But on all of those albums that I just mentioned, uh, you usually only hear one drum set.
Yes.
Is the drum set of the song, and maybe there's percussion, there's other things, but there's the one drum set, and then everything else is just like humongous. So I was like, why can't I do that with the drums? Use the drums as a production tool.
Mhm.
So layer different drum sounds, different drum beats, different drum parts in different ways in different parts of the song, so that you don't really know why it's sounding so big. Why it sounds like kind of like a monster drum set in some parts. Because sometimes I would play the same thing 5 times and
Yes.
just kind of layer it and then mute it in this part and then put it on all the way on the left on this part, all the way on the right on this part, and just having fun with the drum sounds. One thing that became a really useful tool is the Yamaha EAD module and mic, which is a
Mhm.
stereo mic that goes on the bass drum, and you have a module with different settings. So you can record, basically, it catches the whole kit. And
Yes.
you can have the whole kit in a one stereo track versus having a full kit, in 16 mono channels. Like
Mhm.
this is, you can see, my drum set right there. So you see all those mics, in order to record one kit, it's a lot of tracks, and then it starts getting really messy when you want to mix, and then the different levels. So then I started using this thing for different things, and I would have the whole kit in one stereo track. So then I would have maybe two or three of the main kits with the 16 tracks, and then start adding different little things with the EAD just to make things a little easier when it came to mixing. So all the tracks have tons of different drum sounds in,
Mhm.
and I would play the same thing a bunch of times, and then I would listen to it, and then I would be like, well, maybe if I play something completely different on the right cymbal instead of the hi-hat, but put it all the way on the right and kind of soft, but only on the bridge.
Mhm.
And I just started experimenting with those things. So if you listen closely, if you listen with headphones especially, you hear tons of drum activity all over the place. And because of that, I didn't feel like there was a need for a lot of drum solos or drum protagonism, because just the drums themselves are very prominent in the whole thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really, really great point, especially since this is a drumming podcast and like, you know, 90% of the people listening are drummers. And it is so true. I mean, listening to this album from the perspective of a drummer, having been created by a drummer, and it just caters to all of the things that we love to hear and all of the things that we pick up on. So definitely 100% listen with great headphones, because there are things in there. I just am thinking about how I listened, and then I listened again, and then I listened again, and I picked up on all of these things that maybe I didn't hear the first time, when I was listening to the tune as a whole. And
Mhm.
then you kind of zero in. And I always say, like, I have my favorite part of the song. I always have a favorite part. Like, there's a part that you think about, oh, this part coming up, that's my favorite. So I love to just listen over and over again and like do a deep dive. And I think all of our drumming friends will do the
Oh,
exact same thing.
thank you. And
Um,
and I think those great albums, like the ones I mentioned before, that's why they make you listen, make you want to listen a bunch of times, because
yes.
there's just so much material in there that you keep discovering. Well, it's like a great movie, I mean, a great
Yes.
movie, if you watch once, you're gonna get it in a certain way. If you watch
Hmm.
it the second time, you're gonna get different things. If you watch it the third time, it's gonna be different. So
Yeah.
it keeps evolving the more you hear it. And I still listen to So, and I listen to Physical Graffiti, and I listen to the Joshua Tree still to this day, and still it just blows me away, every single time.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make an album that I would want to listen to all the time. That every time I listen, I would be satisfied. I,
Yes.
I love the jazz albums that I've done, but honestly, I don't feel like listening to them as much.
Hmm.
Because sometimes they're really intricate, and you really need to sit down and listen. Here, you can even have, I think, this album in the background, and it is just, it works as
Yes.
that kind of album. But if you want to sit down and listen closely, it also has a lot of information that also comes from jazz, because it's not just a rock album, or it's not uh, a pop album. It has so many elements from jazz, even though they're
Hmm.
tucked in a little bit, because I wanted the song to be the protagonist, the song, the voice, and the drums.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I could put like a genre title on this album, because it is like one song from the next is so different and unique. And you mentioned like the Anna Tiju song, which is like totally different than everything else. And so fantastic. in its own right. I feel like from one song to the next, again, there's an overall theme there, and I feel like your style just pulls everything together, but it is so different. Like, it's it's so varied, and I think that's one of the things that I loved about the album as a whole was just the first time I listened to it, not knowing from one song to the next like what I was going to get, but just knowing that it was going to be great. And then at the end of the song being like, yes, Antonio. So happy. But it's definitely an album that you're going to want to listen to over and over again. So
I
everyone
hope.
listening, yes, get out there, get this album. And I don't want to forget to mention all the other really great things you've been doing lately, because I see we follow along on Instagram and and like see the things that are happening. And you've been out there playing, which the last time we did this podcast together, it was still a little bit, things were happening here and there, but it was still pretty slow as far as getting back to like what we would consider a little bit almost normal kind of the situation that we're in now, where we can, you're playing shows and you're playing festivals, and you just did the Ground Up Festival, which looked amazing.
Oh, that was so much fun. But we all got COVID.
I know.
It was a super spreader event, but
Oh,
that's the world we live in now.
yes.
But yeah, I mean the cool thing is that um, the cool and the challenging thing was how are we going to play all this music live? That was
Right.
I had plenty of sleepless nights. On We had a gig booked already like months in advance for this new band. Sorry, a tour, and I was like, how the hell are we going to do this? Because it sounds really big on the record. So I wanted to have that bigness live. So then I thought, okay, we're definitely going to need to play with tracks. So
Mm-hmm.
it just you can get some of the experience from the album. But who's going to sing all this material? You have men, women, English, and Spanish. And I thought, well, I know a pretty good singer, and it's my wife,
Yes.
Tana Alexa, and she speaks enough Spanish that she can actually, I mean, she learned how to rap in Spanish so that she could do Ana Tijoux song.
Mm-hmm.
She can actually do it, you know.
Yes, you
So it was,
can.
but I was like, wow, it sounds pretty good. Uh,
Yes. And
and
you
she's
posted
singing.
a clip of the Trent Reznor song as well, and she just does. I mean, yes, she's amazing. Your wife is
Yeah.
incredible,
Yeah,
and I
she's
love it.
become also such a master at using effects and pedals and stuff like that. So whenever she needs to get a really deep voice like Trent, then she has this thing which puts everything an octave lower and makes her voice like really thick. So she found ways of making it all work, and then have this incredible keyboard player, Big Yuki from Japan, who is just a master at sounds. And then Lex Sadler from Australia, who is an incredible bass player, keyboard bass player, and also he handles all the Ableton stuff so that he triggers all the tracks and stuff. So it's just a quartet, but we played pretty big places that we're able to fill with the sound because everybody's just so good at what they do. So we've been doing that. We've been doing a bunch of gigs. Now it's starting. We do Newport Jazz Festival next week, and then the whole fall we're just super busy promoting the record because the record hasn't come out, so people still it hasn't made a buzz yet.
Mm-hmm.
I need the album to come out, for the press to come out. People like you helping me out to promote it. I'm incredibly thankful for all of you that put the word out there for us. And we're going to be touring the whole fall, and then I'm doing also another tour with Pat Metheny, where we haven't played since March of 2020
Mm-hmm.
because we were doing a South American tour, and then the pandemic hit, and then everything
Yes.
got canceled. So then we came back home and we never got to do it again. So now we're finally doing that. We're going to Mexico, Brazil, Peru, Argentina, Chile. I can't remember where else, but it's a really nice South American tour. So I've never been to South America with Pat except for Brazil. So I'm super excited about that. And then the other thing that I was doing since January is the soundtrack for a new docu-series on HBO, which is called The Anarchists, which is a really crazy story about this anarchist that go to Acapulco and start a convention and a movement over there.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really interesting story. And I was just going crazy making the music for this since January. And it just premiered the two Fridays ago. No, 2 Sundays ago, sorry.
Right.
So each Sunday there's a new episode, but by the time this comes out, I think all the episodes are going to be out.
Okay, great. And that's on HBO, right?
HBO Max, yeah.
The Anarchist.
The
Yeah.
Anarchist.
I saw you posting that and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this looks intense."
Very, very intense, and
Yes.
it gets weirder and weirder and weirder as the plot develops. But it was very intense to make. I mean, I remember when I was at the Ground Up Fest playing with Bad Hombre, I even brought my laptop and I was doing stuff for the series then at the hotel. You know, it was just a lot of work. So
I bet.
I'm
But
glad that's over, and
yeah,
we can just check it out.
glad it's out. Yeah, everyone should check that out too. The clips that I've seen, your soundtrack work is fantastic and it fits right in with the tone of that series too. So I have to check that out still. I do have HBO Max, so I need to get on there, check
Yeah,
that out too. But where can we find, if we want to like see you out playing either with Bad Hombre or with Pat Metheny, where can we find that information?
Well, the issue, I mean, I'm usually pretty active on social media, so whenever we're gonna do a tour or a gig, I post about it. So you
Okay.
can follow me on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on my website. There's all the info that you would want if you're interested in what I'm doing. Is AntonioSanchez.net.
Perfect. Okay. So I'll put all those links in the YouTube description and in the podcast notes too. So anyone listening can find you easily and follow along and get out there, see you live, and definitely pre-order this album because you will not be disappointed. It's so fantastic. And I'm just really honored to have heard it when I did, Antonio, and I'm so excited for you.
Thank you, Sarah. And, you know, always a pleasure talking to you. You always have the best questions. And just remember the name of the album is Shift, Bad Hombre Volume 2, August 26th.
August 26th. Exactly. We're right there with you. Thank you, Antonio. And I hope to see you out on the road soon. I cannot wait to see you play live and give you and Tana a giant hug.
Yes, please. COVID-free.
COVID-free hugs.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in today. Join us each Tuesday for new episodes of Sarah Hagan Backstage.